41 people now. Okay. Good afternoon, all. Welcome to the Evaluation Bootcamp. So what can be better to give yourself other than a learning opportunity to understand the speech and evaluation in a better way? This particular Evaluation Bootcamp is an initiative by Express2Lead Toastmasters. So when I took my presentation this term, I thought that there is a need to improve on the evaluation and how we write the speech. So that particular thought was running behind in my mind. And then I was looking for a better person who can teach us or guide us. But then I spoke to some of our folks, and then few people got agreed on this. And here we go. My dream is coming true, and we are successfully starting today the Evaluation Bootcamp. And I believe and I guarantee you that if you put your 100% of effort in this particular bootcamp, you will gonna get lots and lots of learning, which will help you in entire your lifetime or your Toastmaster journey or wherever you go. So I guarantee you that you will have a maximum learning. Just give your 100%. To take this meeting forward, I have somebody who will guide you what and all we have for you in the next 6 weeks and how we have planned this bootcamp. So please welcome Kaushal on the stage to walk you further.
Hello everyone. Thank you, Krishna. So I hope if I could have got the real stage. I always love to have to get on the real stage, but yeah, it's a digital time and it's good to be on the digital stage. Good afternoon and a very warm welcome from E2L to everyone. And we express our gratitude to you all for taking this opportunity and joining us. Am I visible here or?
Visible and audible both. Yep.
Okay, fine. So first thing which we all understand that we'll have some basic rule from for this session, which we all expect, like when the trainer or the coach is speaking, so everybody is expected to go on mute, while we also encourage the questions what you have and the doubts what you will have in your mind during the session. We would expect you to write that down and keep it for the question and answer session, which will be held at the later stage. But in case if the trainer or the coach asks you to do that, you are free to express your opinion or ask a question. Next thing is we have a raise hand feature. So in case at any point if you feel there is something that you need to express, you can also raise hand. We will take care of that. And of course, now it's the time. I should tell you a small briefing about why we have come up with this session, of course. So it's part of actually a long set of goal that E2L has about training people in getting the best evaluators around us. So it actually started way back when we had the evaluation laboratory. I hope someone among you would have attended that as well, and it did benefit a lot of us. So that was one thing which spirited all of us, and then we actually understood that, yeah, actually a good training helps us a lot. So we wanted to take it further and take it to a bigger stage. Stage. So now for that we have come up with this particular evaluation boot camp. So as the name suggests, it's a boot camp, which exactly means a rigorous training camp kind of thing. So we do understand why. Now you will understand why this training session has been named like this. But we do expect a lot of excitement and energy from you. Maybe Anudip, if I can just request you to unmute everyone for a moment, so that everybody could clap for a while, so that we understand everybody is energetic here. Can we do that for a moment? Can we all clap for each other, giving this opportunity? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Now there is one small. We all are sitting in our comfort zone and we are attending the meeting from our comfort zone. But when the actual training starts, we would encourage you to go on the video mode so that everybody, I mean, at least the one who's speaking gets the feel of the audience, so that everybody gets the feel of the audience, and it would be encouraging for the speaker to speak to the people. Otherwise, sometimes it might appear that we are talking to the universe and the stars and nobody's responding. So that's one expectation. However, that's not mandatory, and it all depends on you. If you are in some critical situation, you can just go ahead with what you have planned. Now, quickly going to the what we have planned ahead for next 6 weeks is, of course, we understand if we want to be a good evaluator, we need to be a good speaker first, and we need to understand the basic nuances of the speech. So how to deconstruct the speech, how to get into the basic nuances of the speech. So that's how we have planned the sessions. So what we have planned is, first session, which is today's session, will be all about teaching and dealing with the mastering of the speech. So we'll be dealing with the deconstruction of the speech. The second session, which is the next session, so there will be focusing on the observation and analysis. And the third one will be presenting the analysis as observations, as evaluations, analysis and observation as evaluation. So we expect these three things to cover up the 4 sessions of our of our 4 planned sessions. So remaining 2 sessions, what we have planned is a rigorous kind of practice session. So where we'll be practicing with some live video sessions, and we'll have live inputs, and we'll be able to infer some of the basic points and analysis. So that's all we have planned, and you'll get to know more about this, what we have planned, right from the coach and the trainer himself. So ladies and gentlemen, not wasting much time on this because we have a very limited time, we understand. I would I'll take the privilege to introduce to you all our very esteemed coach for this training session. He has started his Toastmaster journey since he's been part of Toastmaster since 2005, and he started his journey from TCS Maitre in Mumbai. And post that, he's been part of chartering 4 clubs in Mumbai itself. Then he's been part of Toastmaster club across different places, like he's been part in Mumbai, the Netherlands, the US, Chennai, and now he's in Bangalore. And it's our privilege in E2L that he has joined E2L as a member. Also, he has been part of almost 75 clubs till now. 75 clubs. Yes, you have heard it right. And he has been member, mentor, area governor, which is now division director, and district contestant for evaluation contest. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome with a thunderous round of applause, distinguished Toastmaster Chandramouli. Over to you, Chandramouli.
Thank you. I'm hoping that I'm audible.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. The whole idea of having this as a boot camp came from the fact that we used to run a program in Chennai called as Walk the Talk. And what we used to do is we used to have a 16-week of workshop on international speech contest speaking, right? So where we break down the speech into multiple aspects, we remove the niceties which we normally put in Toastmasters, right? So we have to tell a lot of good things when we evaluate, but we want it to be open and evaluate frankly, right? That was the intent with which we did the workshop. As a result of it, what happened is, including me, a lot of people, we learned the basics of a speech, and that helped us become a better evaluator. So the thought process is to first start with the speech, understand how a speech works, and take it from there, right? So are you guys excited to start the journey with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Just a second, my keyboard is misbehaving once I start to do the sharing.
Also, you can just straighten up your video a little bit. Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Just give me a second. I'm not able to. I'll just stop the sharing for a second. Okay, I'm trying to, it is stuck for a moment. I'm sorry about this. Just, can someone stop my sharing? I think my screen froze. Yeah, okay, thank you. That is a relief. So before we get started, I wanted to understand from you people as to what, in your opinion, you want to learn from this session. And can I request Kaushal to take a note of things, because I won't be able to take a note while presenting on the screen.
Yes, sure.
So can someone talk about what is the expectations from this session?
Hello.
Yes.
So my name is Pandi Rajan. So I'm from Koramangala Toastmaster Club. So my expectation, so I want to learn more evaluation actually. So the evaluation is the one part. Still, I was little hesitate. I little hesitate to do actually. So I want to learn from this session how to do the evaluation.
Okay.
My expectation.
Perfect. Anyone else?
Hi, Chandramouli.
Yeah.
Sumitra here.
Yeah.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I can hear you.
So I understand evaluations are the most important part of a Toastmaster session, or how to gauge a particular speech and how to move forward with a particular speech. So I joined this bootcamp, and also I'm from SAP Speaker Lead. I joined this bootcamp only to understand what all are the different ways of evaluating a speech. How can you be politically correct? How can you be how your perspective can change when you how it should change when you see or listen to a speech, maybe online or maybe offline. So that is my major goal right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Hi Chandramouli, I had a question. My name is Vaibhav. I'm from Koramangala Toastmasters.
Yes.
So what I basically learned in evaluation is there is the sandwich principle, which is frequently used by a lot of people.
Right.
Are there any better approaches, or are there any more constructive approaches other than a sandwich method when you approach evaluation?
Perfect. Fantastic point. We'll touch upon that. For the time being, I want you to forget anything about evaluation that you've learned in Toastmasters, because so people sometimes tend to pick up, okay, there is this technique called as sandwich. Okay, there is this technique called as this. Okay, this is this technique called as that. But without understanding the purpose of the technique and why it is being used, if you blindly apply it, more often than not, you might not do the right thing, right? So I would not want you to take techniques from here. I want you to take the understanding from here with which you will build your own techniques. Agreed?
Yeah, agreed.
Hope that makes sense. Anything else?
Yeah. Anyone else?
Hi, Chandramouli.
Hello. Hi. I'm sorry, the voice is not audible.
Hi, Chandramouli. This is Sneha here from Airbus India Toastmasters.
Hi, Sneha.
So what I want to know is sometimes when we evaluate, we tend to be a lot positive and we don't want to be that negative. And on the other hand, if we try the other way, we tend to become more of a critique and realize that we didn't say much positive points. So how is it we get a good balance?
Agreed. Fantastic question. We will definitely address that, right? So do you stay, do you want to sound as a good person and give a whitewash feedback and say everything is nice? Or I want to take this mindset off that giving a constructive feedback means you are being a devil on stage. That is not the case, right? What the speaker expects is a constructive feedback. It is not what you say, but how you say it, which will make a difference of whether you're taken in a right way or you're sounding like a critical judge on stage. Right? So that is something that we look at when we go into the session of how do you deliver your evaluation.
Sure, thank you.
Right?
Hello.
Yes.
Chandramouli. Hello.
Hi.
I'm Nandajan from Enterprising Toastmasters, Palakkad in Kerala.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is Toastmaster. One of the major goal or objective of Toastmaster is giving good public speeches.
Perfect.
And to improve public speeches, in Toastmasters, we used to say, evaluate to motivate.
Absolutely.
So when I deliver a speech, it may be good, but to go to the next level, what are all the points or how I can make my speech in a better level, it can be elucidated through the evaluation. If somebody else point out where I have to go or where I have to improve. So even if we are doing better speeches from better to best, or if it is best, better than the best, how that progression can be done. That can be done through the evaluation. So I want to know more about in that kind of, or how can I do that? Yeah.
Right. So I guess all of us are on a similar page. So what I'll do from here is let us get started with the session. These are the aspects. If I was a listener, I wanted to be a part of such an evaluation bootcamp. What I thought should be covered is exactly what you people kind of reflected when I listened to you. And these are some of the aspects which I would definitely touch upon when we go into the session, right? So I don't want to take a much longer time in getting started. So let us get started, go through the session. And in the end, if there are any questions, we'll definitely stop for other questions, all right? And please feel free to, if you are not able to understand something that I'm saying, feel free to interject in between as well. So is my screen visible to all of you?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, all right. So this is what we'll be discussing over the period of the next 6 weeks, right? As Kaushal already pointed out, this week we'll be doing a deconstruction of a speech, which means we'll watch a speech and we learn how to deconstruct the speech. What are the various components of a speech? How do they work with each other? How do they work in a symphony to give us the music that we hear, right? And then we'll talk about, so this is an observation. So all we'll do is observation, no judging, no feedback. Today's session would only be observation, right? Because that is the first and foremost skill that an evaluator should have. Observe, right? While observing, you don't analyze, you observe. And after observing, you take the observation and do the analysis. And that is what we would cover in the next session. And after we analyze, we would prioritize and then construct a compliment or a recommendation, right? So that would be something that we will do. And after that, we'll put all of these together and apply and create an evaluation. So these are the 4 parts we would cover during the next 4 weeks, right? So I hope there is no question so far.
Yep.
No. Okay. So before we get started, I think it is important for us to watch a video, right? Because I can save points, but to connect that, we need an example. So I'm playing one of the speech which kind of broke a lot of myth I had about how a speech should be, right? So I would want all of you to watch the speech. This is by the 1999 world champion, Mark Brown, all right? Hope you guys are ready with notes, because I mean, I would be sharing things, but I would want you people also to share what you observed during the speech. Okay? All of you guys are ready? Let's go into the speech.
Yes.
Our next speaker, Mark Brown, a second chance. A second chance, Mark Brown.
I hope you guys can hear it.
Yes.
You never get a second chance to make a first impression. Mr. Toastmaster and friends, that phrase is fairly common. At first look, we automatically draw quick conclusions about people for various reasons. It could be their appearance, other people's opinions, our own preconceived ideas, or just plain ignorance. We don't always give a second chance. Let me explain. Recently, my wife Andrea, our 3 children and I sat down to watch a very important film, Beauty and the Beast. Oh, you've seen it? Then you know that this is a film you can't watch just once. Your children won't let you. I've seen it 13 times since last Monday. Don't get me wrong. The movie is great for children. The music, the magic, the mystery. But the message is important for all of us. Picture this. The villain is the influential Gaston. He's tall, dark, handsome. I can relate to that. Gaston is in love with the beautiful Belle, but she spurns him and befriends the Beast. Well, in a fit of jealousy, Gaston uses his influence and turns the entire village against Belle and the Beast. Except for seeing his face once in a magic mirror, the villagers know nothing about the Beast. But Gaston, he fuels their fear of the unknown and whips them into a frenzy. This angry mob cuts down trees and they make clubs. They brandish knives, pitchforks, and torches. And they march through the forest singing, "We don't like what we don't understand. In fact, it scares us, and this monster is mysterious at least. Bring your guns, bring your knives, save your children and your wives. We save our village and our lives. We'll kill the Beast." Why? For years, the Beast had lived in isolation, but no one took the time to say, wait, what's he really like? Who is this Beast? Oh no, he wasn't given a second chance. And the irony is, the real Beast was in the hearts of the angry mob. He was a victim of the real Beast: intolerance, indifference, and ignorance. Oh well, it's a movie, it's a fantasy, but intolerance, indifference, and ignorance are a reality. We've got to deal with it every single day. I'll give you an example. Pat Harper, a beautiful network news anchor, reported on the plight of the homeless in New York City a few years ago. To appreciate their circumstance, she dressed as they dressed. She walked as they walked. She lived as they lived for several days. She carried a concealed microphone, and a hidden camera crew followed her every move. It was Christmas time, the season of love, cheer, and goodwill. But here's what the camera saw. I'll never forget this. It was snowing, bitterly cold, and there she sat, huddled in a doorway, shivering, trying to fend off the bone-chilling winds. But hardly anyone noticed her. Those who did hurried by. Some looked right at her and yet right past her. Others looked right through her as they thought, homeless, useless, worthless. No one took a second look. To them, this beauty had a beastly appearance. But the real Beast was in the hearts of those who treated her with disdain. Oh yes, the Beast of intolerance, indifference, and ignorance. The sad truth is, it happens all the time. I'm not just pointing fingers here because I admit I've done it too. But we don't always think about it until we come face to face with it. Perhaps you have been a victim of the Beast. Think back. Do you remember the pain you felt when you faced intolerance just because you were different? Do you remember when you faced indifference? Because like Pat Harper and so many others, well, your situation, that's your problem. And do you remember when you faced ignorance like that of those villagers? Because someone felt as they did, oh, we don't like what we don't understand. In fact, it scares us. Do you remember how deeply it hurt? Perhaps you have participated in acts of intolerance, indifference, and ignorance? Are you guilty of feeding the beast? Is there someone out there, someone in your workplace, someone in your neighborhood, someone in your home who has heard your beast roar? Oh, my friends, do they not deserve a second chance? As the film Beauty and the Beast concludes, the beast dies, and in his place, because of Belle's love, aha, you guessed it, a handsome prince lives. You see, Belle gave him a second chance. Don't you just love it? My children did. It's a perfect fairy tale ending. But that story is a fantasy. Reality, as we know, is not so romantic. And the fantasy will never become reality unless we attack the beast, the real beast. Intolerance, indifference, and ignorance. Yes, let's kill the beast, because everyone deserves a second chance. Thank you.
How was the speech?
Nice.
Okay.
Awesome.
Fabulous.
All right. So now, yeah, now that we have heard it, of course, it was the world champion speech of 1999. He is a fantastic speaker, and this is one of his finest performances. Let us keep that aside and let us try to observe, right, without putting what is good or what is bad. I want us to do a plain observation. So can someone tell me what is the title of the speech?
Second chance. A
Perfect.
second chance.
A second chance. Right? And can someone tell me, let us look at what are the parts of the speech, and we'll relate each part of the speech to the entire speech that we heard, right? The first part, which is the most important part of a speech, is the purpose. Every speech exists for a reason, a purpose, right? Can you tell me what was the purpose of the speech?
To end indifference, ignorance, and treat everybody equally.
Okay, that is the, okay. There are two parts to a purpose. Let me break that down. So first off, there is something called as a general purpose and a specific purpose. Anyone who has done a competent communicator manual might remember it. It's a very useful aspect of the competent communicator manual, the project 3. There are 4 different genres of speaking, which means you speak for one of 4 purposes. If it is not one of those 4 or a combination of those 4, you better not speak, right? That's the meaning of those 4. And those 4 purposes are persuade, inform, inspire, and entertain. Can you tell me, amongst these 4, as a general purpose, what was the purpose of the speech? Was it to persuade? Was it to inform?
To inspire people.
To inspire, right? Okay, some say to persuade, some say to inspire.
So inspire and entertain.
Okay, perfect. So he inspired and he also entertained. Agreed? Now let me make that a little clearer for you, right? So a lot of people can get confused between what is persuasion and what is inspiration. And it's important to break that now, right? Inspiration is when someone, okay, let me start with persuasion. That will be a better way. I'm sorry, let me get started again. Persuasion is nothing but you have 2 choices in front of you. Someone gives a speech, 2 or multiple choices in front of you. Someone gives you a speech to pursue you towards one of the choices. Okay, you have to take a decision and someone persuades you to choose one or more decisions on top of the others, or persuade you not to take one decision, one or more decision, right? So either persuade you for or persuade you against, right? Which is what is essential there is you are taking a decision and someone is persuading you for or against. Best example is you want to buy a TV, right? Which TV you have to buy? Advertisements persuade you for or against a specific brand, right? Reviews persuade you for or against, right? So this is persuasion. When we talk of inspiration, inspiration is slightly different. You already know what is good, right? You know what is good or wrong because you understand when you do something wrong, there is someone inside who says, no, this is something wrong that you're doing. Everybody knows waking up at 5:30 in the morning is good, right? Or probably at 5 in the morning is good. Everybody knows that exercising every day is good, right? No one needs to persuade us to understand that it is good to exercise in the morning, right? But we have that inertia to do that action, though we know it's already good. You need some kind of motivation, some kind of inspiration to do what we already know is the right thing to do, right? So the inspiration aspect is pushing us to do what is right and we know is right. Persuasion is helping us understand what is right and what is not, right? Hope that makes sense.
Yes.
So from that, can you tell me what do you think this speech was? Was it inspiration or persuasion?
Inspiration.
Perfect. Let me ask you that question because this speech is, it's a little bit of a trick there, right? Because what he asks you is to give a second chance to people. And that's a decision we take in our life, right? Whether to give someone a second chance or not, right? He's putting forth argument to say that, you know what? You need to give others a second chance. From this context, it looks like it is a persuasion, but you said it right. It's inspiration because we know that it is the right thing to do to give someone a second chance. There is no one who has a doubt in mind that that's the most earnest thing to do, right? Yet we are judgmental in nature and we don't give someone a second chance. So hence it becomes an inspiring speech. And you have to understand that no speech can be truly just informative, especially informative speeches, right? They can't be just informative. If someone comes and just gives numbers, you won't take them, right? It needs to have a bit of entertainment because to eat a medicine, you need a sugar coating around it. The same way, if you want to convey a big message, you need some amount of humor or some kind of entertainment, which will help clean the palate so that people can take that message, right? So the purpose with which he constructed the speech was definitely for inspiration, right? And what did he want us to be inspired with?
From a story about the Beauty and the Beast.
Correct. That is what he said. But what was the inspiration that he wanted to drive us? So if there is one message he wanted us to take home, what was it?
Just to give a second chance.
Exactly. So he wanted to inspire us to give a second chance wherever we see that we are being indifferent, intolerant, or ignorant, right? Very, very clear. This is his message. This is the purpose of his speech. He is not generally talking about a second chance, but he's talking about second chance when we are indifferent, intolerant, or ignorant, right? It's a qualified second chance, right? That is the purpose of his speech. Agreed? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
perfect. So now let us look at, so this is the why of the speech. I always like talking about anything as three concentric circles: whys and the hows and the what. Anyone has heard of Simon Sinek, the golden circles?
Yes.
It's a fantastic concept. If you have not heard, I would urge you to hear about it. So at the center of anything that we do is the why, the reason why we do it. For the speech, it is the purpose, right? And then there is the how, right? How does this purpose show itself? Is through the words, is through the body language, through the vocal variety, right? And these are the whats, these are the hows of the speech, right? And the what of the speech is what we see as an outsider in it. The opening of the speech, the body of the speech, the closing of the speech, the points that were spoken during the speech, the title of the speech, the transition, and the pauses, right? So if you look at it, the top part, the purpose, it is the why. Words, body language, and vocal variety are the how. And the ones below, which is at the leaf node, those are the whats, right? So when you make an observation, more often than not, what you're observing is one of the leaf node. Of course, body language and vocal variety are also visible, right? And the wordplay is also visible to us. But they are visible through the opening. They are visible through the points that are being said. They are visible through the title, right? So the purpose might also be visible because he says, give a second chance, and that's the purpose, right? So I am abstracting it a little bit. Let me know if it is clear so far.
Yes.
Yep, very clear till now.
Yeah, it's very clear.
Perfect, right? And now let us look at each of these aspects. Title, right? What is the purpose of the title in the speech? Can someone tell me that?
Give a gist about a speech.
Perfect.
It goes through the whole speech. It means the total narration. The title carries right from beginning to end.
Perfect. So can you remember a movie title which impacted you the most, or a movie which impacted you the most?
Titanic.
Titanic, right? Someone else? Yeah.
Pursuit of Happiness.
Pursuit of Happiness. Fantastic. So I got two fantastic titles here, right? So one is Titanic, a single word title, right? Does it tell what the movie is about? Can you tell me what the movie is about?
That happens in ship. Like, no.
What is the movie about? What is the purpose of the movie? That's the, okay. There is a context in which the movie happens, or the setting in which the movie happens, and that happens to be Titanic. That happens to be a historic background, right? But the movie is not about the Titanic. The movie is about the love story which happens between Jack and Rose in the setting of the Titanic, right? That is not revealed by the title. It is just revealing the setting for you, right? A Pursuit of Happiness is a beautiful title because it also has the spelling error in it, right? Whoever has watched that movie, you would know that it is Happy, right?
Yes, correct.
And happiness is not spelled that way. And that is intriguing, right? So when I saw the title for the first time, I was wondering, why did the director leave a spelling error in the title? So that's intriguing. And it made perfect sense when the movie happened, right? A good title should be something like that. One, it should be short. Two, it should be intriguing, because that's the first impression someone gets about your speech. Someone introduces you, your speech, they introduce with the title, right? And that's the first hook that you have with the audience. It should intrigue them, but it should not reveal what it is. Imagine a murder mystery which reveals, uh, say it is X killed Y, and that is the murder mystery, and the title is X killed Y, right? If you reveal more than what is required in the title, do you think that movie would be a hit? Definitely not, right? So that is the purpose of the title, right? It is the first best hook that you have, because you are introduced with the title, and that gives the opportunity to play with words and create something which is intriguing yet is relevant to your speech. It would make a lot of sense when the speech ends, right? So if you have a title like this, um, it's a fantastic title which solves its purpose, and that is the what about a title, right? So we'll walk through each of these points this way. So now coming back to the speech, a second chance. Did it reveal what the speech was about? Not much, right?
Not completely.
It created the curiosity but didn't reveal it.
But at the end of the speech, did it make a profound sense to us?
Yes.
It did.
Yes.
Right? Perfect. So that is what a title does. Now let us look at the opening of a speech. So what did he open this speech with?
It's friendly.
I'm sorry?
You never get a second chance to make a first impression.
Fantastic. So he starts with this, you never get a second chance to make the first impression. It is a fantastic opening for a speech, right? He sets the context right away. On the same line, just to help you understand what all could be in the opening, right? There is another speech which was a world championship speech. You understand that he was completely decked up with a suit, completely formally dressed. Agreed? Not one thing out of place. There was this world championship speaker, and that was in the semi-finals. He walked on stage in a beachwear and a long Hawaiian shirt with shorts and Hawaii chappals, right? And he walked on stage, and when he walked on stage, everybody were like, "What is wrong with him? Is he mad?" Right? So he went there and he asked them, "Did you decide that I'm mad based on what I wore? Or do you think I deserve a second chance?" Right? He made a very strong point there. It was also a speech on making the first impression, right? Uh, so there are different ways to do it. There is no right or wrong, as long as it does what you want to do for the speech, right? There are different kinds of opening. I can probably share that material later. Some of the things which I really like is look at what the opening is supposed to do. Again, you have the title, which is a hook. It is the first impression that you make, right? After that, opening is what you do in the opening is you set the context. Previously, there used to be a saying that you tell them what you're going to tell, and then you tell them, then you again tell them what you told, right? This no longer applies. You can't do that any longer in speech, because over the last 20 years, speeches have evolved so much. Now you tease them, you kind of give a trailer to them with your opening, so that you help them understand what is the setting, what probably the audience can expect from the session, right? At the same time, hook them in, right? And that is what an opening is supposed to do. There are different ways to do an opening. There is no right or wrong way. It would depend upon what kind of speech you are giving, right? For example, if you're giving an informative speech, you want to make the audience yearn for information. They should feel that all I need is this part of information, right? And then you give it to them. So that is what the opening should ideally do. It should make them curious. It should make them hungry for that piece of information, right? And when you're persuading them, Advertisements do that perfectly well, right? They set the context. I mean, good advertisement. I don't mean advertisements in general. Good advertisements, they set the context really well. They give the problem statement and then they give the solution, right? So in the opening, for example, any insurance ad that you see, they would put in a death, right? So, or a bad scenario and make you understand, okay, this could happen to me. So the problem is presented there, right? And then they give the solution. You know what? This is not a problem in which you are alone. There are a lot of people and we have a solution for the problem, right? So depending upon what kind of speech you're giving, you'll have to define the opening. And there is no set way. And if someone has told you that you have to open with a question, you have to open with a song, you have to open with a quote, whatever it is, right? Question why. So let me ask you this question. Why should you open with a question? What do you think a question would do in the opening?
It will open up the minds of the audience.
Perfect. So for example, look at it also from this perspective, right? So when I go to speak on stage, I don't know what the audience are thinking, right? I have to bring them all to a common page. So that is when the remaining things I'm going to say would make sense. So opening gives me the opportunity to bring them all to the same page, right? Which means what I would do is I would seed a thought in their mind, right? A question helps with that. For example, let me think of a good, okay, another speech by Craig Valentine, his semifinals in World Championship. Sorry, Dan, Craig Valentine was 1999 champion. This was 1994. Apology, 1991, I guess. I forgot the year. It is way in the past. Craig Valentine in his semifinal speech, he starts by asking, can you tell me what is the number one reason that people don't achieve their dreams? The number one reason. So the audience start and guess negativity, lack of motivation, lack of goals, lack of this, lack of that, don't have money, don't have this, don't have that, right? Which is what most of us would think. Agreed? So he got this answer from the audience. So he set the stage there, right? And that is when after that he did the most brilliant thing in an opening. He said, all of your answers are fantastic, but they have one thing in common. They are all wrong. Don't get me wrong. They are all great answers, but they're not the number one reason, right? So if this is the opening of a speech, what would you as the audience would want to know? What is the number one? What is the number one reason, right? Fantastic. And that is what a speech would be about, right? So this is what, so here the question made a fantastic opening, right? Always think, what was he trying to achieve? He wanted the audience to be very curious about what the number one reason is. Because that speech is a phenomenal speech in which he turns your head around in the end. To have that effect, he had to do this in the opening, right? So you have to understand what an opening should do. There are multiple ways in which you can do. For example, in one of my speech, in which I spoke of my journey from Kemmangundi to Hebbe Falls, right? I started it with Vande Mataram, the national song, and then walk through the journey. In the end, when I look at the Hebbe Falls, that is when I realize the meaning of the song, which praises the beauty of the nature. And I sing it again. So when I sing it in the end, it makes a brilliant sense, because from the time it is done in the opening, now when I do it in the end, it gives a very different meaning. This is called as a bookmark opening and finish. Like in the book, The Tale of Two Cities, which starts with, it was the best of the times and the worst of the times. Right? Anyone who has read it would know that. And the book exactly ends with the same thing, but in between the content has changed the meaning of those, right? In this speech also, if you notice, he starts with talking about second chance and he ends with a second chance, and what he told in between changed your opinion about what the second chance is. Agreed? So you shouldn't look at opening in itself. You need to look at how it is achieving the purpose. Is it leading the person to the purpose, right? And for the purpose to be achieved, you need to hook the audience, you need to set the context, you need to put them on the same page from which the main aspect of the speech can be delivered, right? And that's the purpose of the opening. Hope that is clear.
Yes.
Perfect. I think probably the rate at which we are going, we might shoot to 4:45. Hope that is fine by you people. Does anyone have a problem if we continue until 4:45?
No problem.
No problem.
Thank you. Let me know if I'm going too slow or if I'm going really fast or anything of that sort, right? Okay. So now going to the conclusion. So the next part to look at is the closing or the conclusion. We already spoke about the opening. What do you think the conclusion should do?
It should connect to the opening.
It can connect to the opening. It can be very different as well. But
takeaway actions.
Exactly, right? So it depends upon the speech. For a persuasive speech, there is an action in the takeaway because you're taking a decision. That's an action, right? For the inspiring speech, the action is to be inspired and go ahead and do the right thing, right? But for a humorous speech, what is the action? There is no action, right?
A message could be.
Is a message required for a humorous speech? Is a message requirement for an entertaining speech?
Not really required.
Not really,
Yes.
right? So let us get that right. If it's a humorous speech or an entertaining speech, message is not a requirement. If it is there, great. But a speech can be just with the purpose of entertaining. No nonsense. So there are times that you would feel, right? I want to watch some mindless movie and feel entertained. That's it, right? I don't want, nobody would watch a movie like Hum Shakal. I'm just giving an example. If you want to take some message from that movie, right? It's mindless, but it's fantastic because it entertains me to the core, right? And that's the purpose of that particular movie. I can't, what do you say, question on that. And there are sad movies as well, like the soap operas which come on TV. They have a lot of sadness filled, right? But it does manage to entertain people. There is no message in it, right? You will be a fool if you search for a message in it, right? But it's fantastically entertaining, right? So a speech can be entertaining without a message in it. Agreed? So what do you do in a conclusion is you reinforce the purpose of the speech, right? If it is a persuasive speech, you reinforce what you're persuading them to do. Like, that's why you would feel that a second chance is a persuasive speech because it calls for an action in the end. He says, you give them a second chance, right? So it's an action on you, right? So it's persuading you to do something like that. Agreed? The next time you might decide, okay, when you have a chance to make, you have an opportunity to give someone a second chance, probably you might remember the speech and give a second chance, right? So that's the call for action this one would have. What would an informative speech want you to do? What would be the purpose of the informative speech?
Implement the information, like whatever it is.
Not necessarily, right? So an informative speech would want you to return home more knowledgeable, right? Agreed?
Yeah.
What you do with that knowledge is absolutely up to you. It's your decision. But you return home with more knowledge. An evaluation speech is an informative speech, right? The speaker might not go home with an action plan, but the speaker would go home informed about his own speech, which would drive him to come up with an action plan. Agreed? Your speech is not going to give him an action plan. It is going to give him the information. He'll take that information, process it, and come up with the action plan. So the most important purpose of an informative speech is to give the information, right? So your conclusion should reinforce the information. That's why most of the informative speeches would end with the summary, right? You'll summate whatever you spoke. Any seminar that you attend, in the end, they'll capture what all happened, right? They'll just do a summary, because seminars are informative in nature. Agreed? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then you have the body of the speech, right? In the body, you can have 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
Kaushal here.
Yeah.
So there is one more observation which I wanted to add here.
Right.
So offline and everything, people use callbacks. So
perfect.
Like here also we see a second chance has been used as a callback.
Exactly.
In fact, the world champion 2014 Dhananjay also has used I see something as a callback.
Right. More than that, the biggest callback he uses is the rose, right?
Yeah. Sorry, rose. Yeah.
The rose. Yeah.
The rose petals. So what I wanted to understand is whether a genuine story can be stringed around this, or you can have the callback first and then you go writing the speech in that way. So
there is no right or wrong about how to do it. Let me give you an example on that. Does a movie have to start with the scene in mind, or you first write a script and then come up with the scene?
First do the script and then write
normally script is written and then
right. The biggest hit of yesterera of Rajinikanth. I don't know how many of you know Rajinikanth. I'm sure that all of you know Rajinikanth. You might not know all his good movies, right? His biggest hit is Badsha, right? And yeah, that movie was on the basis of one scene. So Rajinikanth was traveling by flight, and in the flight he saw a Korean movie. There is this one scene in the Korean movie. People who have seen Bacha would be able to relate to this. So there is this group of friends. They're going to meet someone who's very important, and this guy who's a hero, he asks the rest of his friends to stay there. He goes inside to talk to this very important person, and that guy is very arrogant, and his friend is the hero is very humble. He's with his hands tied, and these guys are observing from outside. It's a glass room, the sound can't be heard, and there is this transformation which happens. Slowly this guy who is humble, he becomes like he showcases his majesty, his majestic demeanor, and the other guy who's important now almost is falling at his feet. Right, the transformation happens inside the room, and this particular one impacted Rajinikanth, and he wanted a movie in which this could be a scene. Right, and that's how Basha was made. Right, so it is perfectly fine to start with the concept and then do something, or other way around. There is no right way of going about it, but in the end it should make sense. Agreed? There is no one way to write a book. There is no one way to write a speech, but in the end it should be sensible. You can't write a speech for a metaphor and get carried away by it and not give a good speech, though you might deliver a good metaphor, right?
So on a general note, these speeches, I mean, I'm just asking, so whether they tend to impact more on the what is it, memory
definitely
of the
callback is useful, right? So callback is fantastic, right? I'll tell you something which is interesting. One of my friends, Alexander Babu. All of you know him probably. Alex in Wonderland.
Yes, Alex.
Okay. So he was 2013 humorous speech contest winner. Right? If you people have seen it or not, I don't know. His speech is like a parody of the contest in itself, right? And his jokes are around what happens in a contest, and in which he is like he cracks a joke about 1 minute of silence as well, right? And he walks off the stage, and the contest master comes on stage and says, now 1 minute of silence for the judges, and everybody laughs, right? That's, he left it lingering because the next statement which the contest master has to say is a callback of what he gave in his speech, right? So that's a fantastic construct, right? So he might not have started with that construct. Probably he might have started with the construct. We don't know what is the case, but the end result is cohesive and meaningful, right? And that is what is important.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know what you would have heard. So I want to kind of break some of the myths that you might have. That each of the point in the speech, do you have some golden number in your mind that these many points need to be there in the speech? I've heard a lot of people thinking at least that there should be 3 points in the speech, right? There is a reason behind 3 points, but that is not something which is written in the Bible or Quran or the Bhagavad Gita. It is not something which is, what do you say, not changeable, right? It's a guideline. Why do they say 3? Because each of the point you would want to tell a story. The story might last probably for 1.5 minutes. So if you have to do 3 stories for 1.5 minutes, that gives you 4.5 minutes. You have an opening, you have a conclusion, put them together, it becomes 6 to 6.5 minutes. If you add one more, you will exceed the time limit, you go to 7.5 minutes. So keeping that in mind, probably that seems just about right. But I know speakers who have done around, there is one speech called as Get Up, in which he does 10 anecdotes in a speech, and it was a semi-final speech in the World Championship, right? So the number is not important. What you need to look at is whatever has been put in. There might be just one story, but is that a solid story? Is that solving the purpose, right? There might be 3 stories, the perfect number, but all of them are pathetic stories, right? So is that 3 making sense there? 2 of them are fantastic. The third one is just added because 3 is the number. That also does not make sense, right? You get the drift on where I'm going. So don't have a thought in mind that this is a right number, this is a wrong number. So in this speech, let us go back. And what do you think are the points which he said? What are the points? So there were 3 things that he was tackling, but he tackled all the 3 together: indifference, intolerance, and ignorance. He didn't separate them, right? What were the support material he gave for people having indifference, intolerance, and ignorance?
So one is the beauty and the beast story.
Beauty and the Beast story, perfect.
And then it was the journalist who had gone and disguised to shoot homeless people.
Yeah, Pat Harbour, who came in as the homeless, the reporter, right?
Yeah, the reporter in disguise.
And what was, he had a third point. I want to see if you guys were able to look at the third point. And that is the most interesting aspects that a lot of speeches we forget to do when we look at someone who creates an impact doing it. That is when we're like, oh yeah, this is also a solid proof.
Right. He talks about the villagers of the.
That is the, so Beauty and the Beast comes across in multiple places. So that is one proof, right? This story is another proof. And the third proof, he knows that you have come across that in your life. So he makes you recollect things that might have been done to you. And the most interesting part is, first he puts you as a victim, because you remember a lot of things that in places where you would be a victim, and you'll feel the pain, right?
Yeah, he tells that you don't believe it unless you go through that. So that is one
Exactly.
point he has mentioned.
So he helps you understand, and that also some people might not have experienced being the victim, but they might have victimized others. So he turns the table around and he says, he didn't say, did you victimize? And that is the beauty of the words there. He said, have your colleagues, neighbors, or friends heard your beast in you roar, right? So he did not put it in a harsh way, but he made you think of, have you committed that crime, right? So all he wants there is for you to look for experience in your own life, because I might tell you two stories, but what is going to impact you the most is the story which happened to you. And that is the third and the strongest point that he put. The first two are leading to the third point, right? So it is important for you to understand these are the 3 points that he used, right? Now is it clear? Right. And then there are transitions. So most people might not understand what a transition is. So let me try my best to explain what a transition is. So you might have heard of what is a recency effect, right? So imagine that a speech is link chains put together into a bunch of, into a chain of links, right? So the most recent one would be the last statement that you made. Say that is the last link. And if I say I pull that up, right? Which means I'll start to look at the speech backwards. And that's what our mind does when a speech ends. Does the links link together? Right? From the conclusion, can you go to the last point which was said? Then can you go to the penultimate point? Then you can go backward. Can you go all the way to the opening? Can you go to the title of the speech? Which means they have been connected really well. Now let me explain what the transition is. So when I move from point 1 to point 2, right, I am moving from one piece of information to another, one support material to another, or from opening to body or from body to conclusion. I might assume certain things in my mind and make the transition. I might leave the audience in the lurch because they are not able to make the transition because they are stuck in this, right? Have you seen speeches where it happens? If you have seen it, you understand what a lack of transition is. What transition means is you understand the audience that they will have difficulty moving from this point to that point. And what do you do to ease that? How do you bring them together? How do you make it easy for them to move from one point to another, keeping all of them in the same page? And that is a transition, right?
Screenplay.
I'm sorry, someone said something?
No, screenplay. The magic of screenplay.
Yeah, the magic of screenplay. In this case, the magic of script writing for a speech, right? And transition can be words, can be body language, can be your voice. It could be any of the things, but that is a transition. And the last and most important aspect is a pause, right? What a pause does in a speech is very important to understand. When you're talking with your friends, have you noticed that you wait for the nod from your friend, right? Do you wait for the nod all the time? It is almost second nature to us when we have a one-on-one conversation. We look for what the audience, what the other person is acting. It gives us an idea whether that person comprehends or not. We wait for that and we move on. when you say something which is really complex, you need to give that pause, right? That is the time which the audience would take to comprehend it, and they'll go, ah, now I get it. If you don't give that time, they don't understand, appreciate what you have said, right? So that is one way of using the pause. The other way is to dramatize, and this is where I've seen a lot of people use it. So you pause before and after something which is big, like it's a calm before the storm, right? But the most common pause which we need in our speech is the one for comprehension. So you imagine the audience, you look at least one or more audience and wait for them to nod with every logical statement that you make. And give that nod for them and then move on. That pause is required for comprehension, right? So these, the bottom ones, the opening points, title, body, transition, pause, and closing. This is the what of the speech. And that brings us to the how, the words, body language, and vocal variety. So you have the purpose. There is a purpose with which the speaker comes on stage and has to deliver the what's, right? In order to do the what's, I know what is the message. How do I decide what should I do? There are three modes of transport. I can either use words, I can use body language, or the vocal variety. These are the delivery mechanisms for my message, right? Some things are better delivered with words, some things are better delivered with body language, some things with vocal variety, right? You want to travel from point A to point B, there are multiple modes of transport, but you'll always choose the best way, which is suited for you. That's the same with a speech. You would choose depending upon your expertise in these areas and what you think will earnestly convey or the best possible way convey the message. It is not sane to choose all the three. Probably you'll use combination of two. Sometimes you use all the three, but it is not always, you know, it is not necessary, for example, for you to say, I ran, right? It doesn't make sense. You're not doing Bharatanatyam on stage, right? If you actually run on stage, you run on stage, people see. Or you say, I ran, right? You just show with your hand, I ran, right? So people can imagine, right? That is one aspect. Then when we talk of body language, there is stage usage, right? So stage can be used in two different ways. One, to make a transition, right? So you can, this is what most of the people would say, use past, present, future, so on and so forth. You move from places on stage and that gives you a transition. But it is not necessary for you to do it always from left to right, past, present, future. That is a formula. You can form your own formula. For example, I have given a speech in which I imagined the stage was a room. I divided it into two rooms. One room my parents were seated, the other room where I was. And I replayed the scene as though it was a drama on stage. The audience got it, right? And this is called as hologram. You make them a part of the scene by, you don't visually show it, but your actions, you believe that a table exists there, the audience can see the table, right? So this is another way of using body language. And then there are gestures and facial expressions. Gestures are used to show things. For example, I ran, so this is a gesture, right? So I ran. Or when you compare things, you do this. So these are not necessary things to do. You have your own way of doing things. Understand your way of doing things, right? And that becomes a body language. Fine tune on them, right? And then comes voice, right? Voice, more often than not, is used to express the mood, express the feelings, right? So don't assume that someone who's angry would always shout, right? You need to look at yourself, understand what is the right way in which you would express yourself. Maybe you are one of the person who would say, shut up or I'll kill you, right? That is still anger. It is at a lower tone. It is still as deadly as someone shouting at the top of their voice, right? So you understand yourself and you express the right way. Don't think you have to sing a song or you have to play multiple roles to give a vocal variety. Though that is good, vocal variety is nothing but how do you earnestly express the feelings? So the whole aspect of delivery is to ensure that the audience are not just listening to your narration, but they're feeling a part of the experience, right? So for which you use the words. CC4 talks about how do you set a scene with words. Then you use your body language and your vocal variety. So these are three different mediums, right? So the purpose is the intent, the reason for the existence of the speech. The delivery is the, so we have the delivery, which is the mode of communication that is used by the speaker. And then you have the content, what is being said, more importantly, unsaid. Some unsaid words have a greater meaning, right? So in essence, the purpose is the why, the second part is the how, and the third part is the what. Hope this breaking down of a speech was very clear. Please do ask me if you have any questions.
So we have exactly reached 4:45 now, as
correct
we are told. So we are just on time.
Right.
So we can now have questions, right?
Yeah. So I would like questions, but before that, I'll share this PPT. There is one more speech which I have put in here. I would want you people to take a look at this video and kind of break it down into observations, right? I want to understand the various components. So what was the purpose of the speech? What was the opening? What was the body? All these things.
One quick question, sorry. So is that the one which you are going to leave the people with for their assignment kind of thing?
Correct. That is this link. That's a different speech.
We'll be sharing the link also in the group, right? Later.
Yeah, I'll be sharing this PPT.
Sure.
This could be shared. I have shared it with you on WhatsApp. That could be shared with everyone.
Sure.
I would like to take questions. People who wish to leave, if you have something else, please carry on. I'll be waiting. If you want, I can wait for 1 more hour as well to answer questions. Sure.
My name is Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Yeah, so I have one question. So this is related related to the delivery mechanism.
Right.
So when the person is giving a speech and he doesn't have any kind of humor or entertainment or anything, suppose if he wanted to inspire people, is it okay for that person only to give speech without like related to that, like I can say more serious into that speech, not adding anything into that?
Fantastic. So so what I did today was a speech, right? Was the speech okay?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Was there humor in it?
Yeah, it was a mix of everything. It has everything in that. Yeah.
No, but most of so I didn't do humor. The humor was done by the what do you say, the speech that I played that had the humor, right? I'm talking about my speech.
Okay.
This entire session is a speech, right?
Yeah.
So did it have humor in it?
It was there here and there, like a slight.
Very little, right?
Yeah.
But would you call this as an entertaining session? See, because I am not someone who's great at entertaining.
Okay.
I can be mildly entertaining at the best, right? So
yours was an informative.
Informative, more information.
Exactly. Yeah. So now look at the purpose. So let me tell you how humor can be used in an informative speech. How can it be used in a persuasive speech or an inspiring speech? Humor is a fantastic palate cleanser, right? So any of you have gone to taste wine? Okay. Any of you bought perfume from a perfume shop? You might have, most probably, right? Do they give you coffee bean to smell in between when you what do you say, smell one perfume then go on to another?
Yes.
Right? Humor does exactly the same thing, right? You might walk into a speech having 1,000 thought process in your mind. Agreed? Probably if you're a man, you might not be able to relate to the number 1,000. But believe me, there are people who have 1,000 things running in their head, right? So your speech is one more thing that they are listening to. If you want them to pay the complete attention, right, you need to, cleanse their palate. They should be open to accept ideas, right? Humor is a fantastic tool which can be used in that. The greatest of the speakers use humor just before they make the biggest point, right? So because that is now you laughed out and you are open to accept what is coming. So that way humor helps. But is humor the only way to do it? Probably not. There are other ways to do it as well, right? If you wonder what are the other ways, shocking the audience is a great way to do it. There is one speech which I wanted to play that contains, so there is this person who starts off by saying, it's a very normal start, where he starts off by saying that he's having a discussion with his nephew, who's around 2 years or 3 years of age. And he asks him the age-old question, what do you want to be in your life? And this nephew says that he wants to become Miss India, right? And this guy is mildly entertained because this is a guy, right? Nephew is a guy, and he wants to become a Miss India, right? The smile comes on his face, and immediately his nephew catches that, and he's like, yeah, I know why you are laughing. I know that I can't be a Miss India. So this guy is like, okay, wants to probe and figure out, okay, why do you think that's the case? So he puts out his hand and shows the color on his hand and says, because I'm dark, right? It's a 2-year-old. A 2-year-old can think of having food, playing, and other things. Color of the skin is not one of the things that should come in the mind. If a 2-year-old thinks of this, that indicates how bad our society has become, how much we are driven behind the color of the skin, right? So if you look at the speech is about how the society has changed, all right? And he shocked you to take that in, all right? Brilliant job at doing it. There is no humor in there, right? So you have to find a way to deliver your message. You would have a way. It probably might be with humor. It probably might not be with humor. But figure out what is the right way for your content.
Good. Yeah.
But it is good to exercise the, brain of humor. Because, see, I have used it when I became the division director. So any of you have gone to the elections, you would know that you are supposed to give a speech at the elections. I used humor there, right? So then I was weighing around 105, 106 kilos, so probably 110. So I just started off by asking that I know what you people are thinking. You're wondering what this overgrown person is standing here and kind of asking me to vote for the role of division director. And I moved aside and I showed myself. Everybody laughed, right? Because I was fat. I said I was overgrown, and people saw that as a fact. Then I moved to the dais, and I said, not the dais, the lectern, and I said, because if there is one thing that I stand for growth. Right? My pitch was around growth, right? That how, as an area director, I was happy to be a part of all the clubs, and I grew with those clubs. We failed in some, we succeeded in some, but we always grew in each one of those steps that we took, right? So I put that as the pitch. But you look at it, the humor helped me. So now they would think I'm an authority of growth, right? all I did was clean the palette with the humor and then use it to the main content. So if you have that ability to do it, it's a very, very useful thing to do. I hope that answers your question, Peter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I think
I
we can
think
have
your
the video.
reference to
Okay. Sorry, please go ahead. Yeah.
I think your reference to humor as a palette cleanser was interesting. I think why most of the advertisements are humorous. That drives home the good message.
Sorry, your voice is
Am I
not
right?
clear.
Yeah, I said your reference to humor as a palette cleanser was good. So that's what we can remember are humorous in nature.
Perfect. Yeah, that's true. A lot of advertisements tend to be humorous because that humor opens up your mind to accept what is to come. Right? Fantastic observation. So it is good to observe these things around. Don't just look at speeches, right? The best of the things could be in books, could be in movies, could be in things that happen around you, so everything that happens around you happens for a purpose, right? There are multiple ways of communication and everybody is trying to communicate for a specific purpose. Once you understand the purpose, look at how they are trying to inform, look at how they are trying to persuade. Look at all of this. Movies are fantastic examples, right? So you can get a lot of inspiration from them. Do this analysis. Okay. So what I would want you to do for next week is look at the speech and note down all these minutest things which you can look at. How was the words being used? How was the body language used? How was the vocal variety used? What was the opening? What were the various points? Where all did the speaker pause? What were the transitions? Okay. And what was the conclusion? So I would want you to do that, right?
So are we going to play that again here, or we are going to leave them? Okay.
They can watch it. So you can
Sure.
share the link. I'll share the link in the WhatsApp group as well.
Sure.
Right.
Fine.
Please ask me if you have any other questions.
I think we have 4 minutes to go for 5 o'clock. So maybe we can take up one more question.
At 5, you are having a hard break?
I mean, no, I'm just open for everyone, but just for the interest of time, if everybody wants to.
Perfect.
Or we can just go on if everybody is interested and can carry on. Yes.
How do you name a good title for a speech?
Right. So can you give me an example of see, it is I am a big follower of Ayn Rand. Any of you read Ayn Rand? Have you read Ayn Rand? Any of you have read Ayn Rand?
No. Okay. Yeah, Fountainhead. Fountainhead.
Perfect. So she had a great difficulty to call it as Fountainhead. You know what was the working title? So when you write a speech, you have a working title, right? So a lot of movies, they have a working title and they actually title it in the end, right? That makes a lot of sense to me because my style of writing is a speech. I am inspired by Ayn Rand, right? So I'm giving that example. So Ayn Rand's working title was Copycat for Fountainhead, right? Now I'll ask you this question: does Copycat Fountainhead create that impact?
Fountainhead is very conveys a lot of emotions. Copycat won't do that.
Yeah, but why is it a Fountainhead? Does the title make sense in the end?
Source of ideas.
Is behind it, right? So now, if you think about it, you'll understand it. What happens in a fountain? There is a small opening, right? And the water is coming through that opening. So the water copies the shape of that opening. You understand that? Water copies the shape of the opening and becomes the fountain. Yeah. So what causes the fountain is the fountainhead, right? The fountain is actually the copycat of the fountainhead. And that's why the book is about the fountain, right? It's very profound when you think about it.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Someone said something? Hello?
No,
Okay.
Is someone trying to speak here?
Yeah. So let me carry on. So
please come again.
So that is how you cleverly transform the title, and it's not easy, right? You need to think a lot to get that kind of a transformation in the title. But first you start with the title, and then you look at how you abstract it as much as possible, which creates that interest. You understand the purpose of the title. You have a working title, then you look at how you can transform it into that fantastic title. So it's a journey. It's not easy. Like all of you would agree that writing speech is not easy. The first time you would have struggled. Now that you have the idea of what are the things that you can do with the title, probably explore. You might succeed, you might fail, but that's a good learning, right? You know, when a title, go back and analyze why it did not work. Go back and analyze why it worked, right? Over a period of time, you will become better at titling a speech.
Just one more point to just add here.
Yes.
Probably just want to check. So when we open a speech with a story, what I do is the speech when I don't.
Perfect. So you can open or close a speech, but there is no best way to close any speech, right? The best way is the way in which the purpose achieved the most. Right? So probably connecting back to the story, all the speeches might not be the most suited one, right? For example, his right. Let's look at the speech which we saw, the second chance, a second chance, right? The opening, he made a quote that you only get one chance to make the first impression. He ended by stating his comments give, right? There is no story connection in these two. One is just a statement, right? He opens with a statement, right? It's not a story. The story follows that, but he opens with a statement. Did that suit the speech? Of course, it suited it the best. There was Sivakumar Palaniappa. Not Sivakumar Palaniappa. His name is Palaniappan, Subramanian Palaniappan. He was runner-up, I forgot which, 2012. So he is from Malaysia, and his speech is walking. So walking in or in your shoe or in your shoe, something like that, right? I forgot the title. He comes on the stage dressed in formal, wearing a sneaker on one leg and a formal shoe on the other. Okay, and everybody sees that. And he goes on stage and he says, I thought today the dress code is semi, pointing to his right foot, formal, pointing to his left foot, right? So everybody laughs because they get the joke, right? Then he says, but this is making me uncomfortable, and he removes those shoes and he keeps them there, right? And then he is barefoot through the speech. And he talks about how more often than not we walk in other shoes, which makes us uncomfortable, right? So you look at it, it makes a lot of sense through the speech when he does that. So that is a fantastic opening with humor, but it relates to the speech, right? So you can open with the humor, you can open with the story, you can open with singing, you can open with the statement, you can open with a question. There are multiple ways to open. All these can be used in the conclusion as well, right? And then you can also use a quote. Though I wouldn't suggest you opening with a quote, because when you open with a quote, you normally say Mahatma Gandhi said, or someone else said, right? But they said years ago. Right now you are standing on stage, you should be the hero. If it is an important speech for you, you start with something. There was this fantastic speech which I heard, in which he said Gautama Buddha said, and he made a quote, and then he said, but Gautam Sharma says, right? He made a twist on it and he said, so now he took it to Gautama Buddha, people's attention went to Gautama Buddha, then he brought it back to himself on stage, right? It makes perfect sense. So you want to grab the attention of the audience with the opening and leave the message strong and clear with the closing. Anything that helps you do that is fantastic. Don't get restricted by this is the way for it to do, this is not the way for it to be. Okay.
Yeah, I would like to know about the content, in the sense, whatever I have done so far is giving a personal story and then connecting with the audience. But then after giving a lot of table topics and also the regular speech, sometimes we feel like there is nothing else to share with people if we do it constantly. So
I'll
what
ask
is
this
the
question, and thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, please carry on. I'm sorry.
what is the other ways to build up the content? Because I'm not into that much of fantasy also, so I can't build my own story. But I can easily make them relate to my story by giving an example of what has happened in my life. But then at some point, I felt like there is no more content and what I should prepare. So that is what my question.
Okay. So the speech that we just saw, one of the myths that it broke for me is that your speech should have only personal stories. The two examples, the 3 points that he made in his speech, none of it was his personal story. The only thing personal in that story was the fact that he and his kids watched that movie.
Yeah.
Right? The stories that he used was the Beauty and the Beast, the story of the reporter Pat, and the third one was the story which you search for yourself, right?
Yes.
Because he asked a question to help you probe in your own mind for the story which supports his speech.
Yes.
So where is the personal story in that? So I've heard a lot of people say that you need to have a personal story. There is no need to have a personal story, but it is important to personalize the story, which means the audience should still feel a part of that experience. So when he did Beauty and the Beast, you felt you were a part of that movie, watching experience with him and his kids, didn't you?
Yes.
When he spoke about the reporter, you felt that you followed the reporter on the street, didn't you? So if he achieved that, that means he achieved the impact which is required, right? So certain places you give stories, you can give facts, you can give quotes. So there are different kinds of support material, right? You research, you come up with numbers. That is a support material, right? So it depends upon what kind of speech you're giving and what is the right support material for it.
Okay.
And if you want to build a story, it is not very difficult, right? Let me quickly cover on how do you build a story, right? So more often than not, a lot of people would take 1,000 aspects of what happened and stray away from the most important purpose. Right. So Ayn Rand is fantastic with respect to that, and I kind of reading her books, I developed this. What do you say? I think this is a better way to go about constructing a story. Right. There are 3 C's. This all of us know the 3 C's. One is the character, the conflict, and the climax. Right. Characters are the people who are there in the story. You need to characterize them, and when you characterize them, more often than not, you would see that if I want to say that the truth always wins, obviously the hero would be someone who will be standing by truth, right? And there would be someone in the opposite end, the villain, who would be standing by lies. And there would be people in between who are indifferent, some of them tending more towards the truth, some of them tending more towards the lie, some of them who don't give a damn about it, right? These are the kind of characters who would be there. Since they are characterized this way, you would know that there would be situations where there would be a conflict which will arise, right? For example, you want to talk about cleanliness at home. What would you do? A husband who is absolutely dirty and a wife who is a cleanliness freak, right? So what would happen? Obviously, the husband will go around throwing things. The wife will come and say, don't you care about it? It's our house, it's dirty, right? Obviously, when you put 2 characters who are opposite in a situation, the characteristic could emerge, right? And a conflict will come. And when that conflict is resolved, right, it depends upon what message you want to convey. If you want to convey that it's okay to be dirty at home, probably you'll make a statement like, you know what, we can keep it very clean and then it won't be home, it will become a museum. It's supposed to be our house. It's supposed to be the way we want it to be, the most comfortable. It's a perfect conclusion. It proves the point, right? If that is what is the intent of your story. Whereas if the wife has to say, if you can't keep even the house clean, how do you expect us to keep the country clean? What you want to do starts from your house. This proves a very different point, right? But you are able to come to that because you put 2 contradictory characters in a situation where that contradictory nature comes. The conflict comes. And when the conflict kind of ends in the climax, that is when the message emerges. Agreed? So this is the way in which a story can be constructed. You can look for experiences in your life, right? So when some things impact you, it impacts you because there would have been a conflict and there would have been a climax. Okay, it is just that you think that your life does not have stories. I'm very sure it would have a lot of stories. Maybe not yours, maybe others. Maybe something that happens to someone else, which you have heard. Maybe something that you watched in movies which impacted you. But they do leave an impact in you, right? If you have ever been impacted in your life, you have a story.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Think of a way in which you can help the audience earnestly feel the impact that you felt, right? You will definitely come with the support material.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem.
There is one question. There is one question in the group saying, who was the other ISC winner which the DTM Chandramouli spoke about other than Mark Brown? I hope it was Craig Valentine.
Craig Valentine, yeah.
Just wanted to confirm.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. For me, because I'm doing the sharing, my screen has hung. I'm just managing with it. I can't see the chat. Forgive me for that. So are there any other questions there? Yeah, this is here. Craig Valentine.
Any other question? Just check if there is a raise of hand. So the initial expectation that we noted down, I think that will be covered by the end of at least the 4th one, because that was more about final things of the evaluations.
Perfect. So today, the aspect of the various parts of speech and how they work together. Do you have any questions on that? Is that part clear? Now, if a speech is given to you, would you be able to identify what the title is? What is the purpose of the speaker? What was the intention behind the speech? What are the various aspects of the content? And how were they delivered? Where the wordsmith was used? Where was the body language used? Or rather, how the words were used, how the body language was used, and how vocal variety was used. What is the opening? How did it add to the purpose? So, will you be able to understand all these aspects? Yes?
Yep.
No? Maybe?
Yes.
Definitely. Definitely.
Perfect. Perfect. Any other questions in these aspects?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So I always struggle with transition. I can come up with multiple stories to talk about, but when it comes to having a proper transition from one to another, sometimes I go to an extent it will look very artificial. So then I would want to tweak the story that I'm going to do. So is there any tips I can follow for a transition?
Thanks for bringing up this question. Right? Because I mean, normally people think there are ways in which you should transition. There is no formula, and that is what I want to tell here. But there is, you need to understand what a transition does, right? And that is what I try to explain. There are 2 points. You're moving from one to the other, and you help the audience move with you, right? Say, for example, you move from story 1 to story 2 in your mind. Right? And this is what happens in your speech, right? You move from story 1 to story 2. Are you able to make transition in your mind? Of course you are able to, and that's why in your speech you wrote it that way. When do they say the transition does not happen smoothly is when audience struggle to come with you from the first story to the second story. Now let us look at why that would happen. That would happen because you had something in your mind as an assumption that the audience would understand. Of course, the audience did not understand that. Hence, that they couldn't make the transition from story 1 to story 2 the way you did, right? There is some information which is hidden within you, which had you given it to the audience, they would have moved with you. That is a transition. Do you agree? So sometimes a pause would do the transition for you. What would help the audience move with you? You need to ensure that they are on the same page and they understand the same thing which helped you move from one point to another. In order to do that, you will have to sit down and think, okay, I wrote this point, and after that, I think this point should come. Why am I finding a relationship between these 2 points? What are the various factors which relates this point to this point? What is in my mind which I have not brought it out on paper? Write them all down. The transition lies in what you write in them. Right? Over a period of time, you'll understand what is the best way to bring that out. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah. And I can also use bridge words or something which would probably connect one sentence to another sentence, or one story to another story.
Perfect. You can use words as a bridge. So it depends. So there is no one way to do it. If that is the way which helps you, perfect. Right? But the best way to do the transition is understand why in your mind there is a connection and ensure that the audience feel the same in their mind so that they can get the connection. Right?
Okay. Thank you.
The best example, have any of you played connection games? Where there are 3 things which are random and non-related, and there is something which seems to relate them.
Yeah. It used to come in the television.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me give an example for people who do not know it. Thank you for that. So 7X and Hrithik Roshan. 7X and Hrithik Roshan. If I state 7X and then state Hrithik Roshan, obviously you won't be able to connect those two. But there is a connection between them. So I'm able to connect them in my mind because I know the connection. Right? If I spell that connection out, you will also be able to understand. Let me state the connection. Coca-Cola is the connection, right? So Coca-Cola has a secret formula. So these are the myths around, they create myths around these beverages to make them sellable, right? So they have this secret formula, which is known only to 7 people in the world, right? And that formula is called a 7X. And that makes its way into every bottle of Coke. And Hrithik Roshan was the brand ambassador for Coke when Coke came into India. Right? So that's the connection. Coca-Cola is the connection. So this is what happens. And so now I help the transition from 7X to Hrithik Roshan. Right? Because I stated out the connection that they have. Now if I say 7X and Hrithik Roshan, you will be able to connect them. Right? It's ease. So this is the transition I spoke of. Right? And you'll have to find that transition from point A to point B. Right? Do we have any other questions?
I just have a very general questions like related to speech preparation practice. So
Yes.
how we to like fine tune the speech like before we getting on the stage? So we know, okay, now it's a perfect time like to pitch the speech. So how you do that, judge?
Okay. Good question. Do you always wait for the perfect speech and deliver the speech, or do you give a speech which is in progress? See, I have done both. I have given a speech which I thought was perfectly prepared and was trashed by the audience because that speech was good as per me, but it was not good for the audience. Right? And that is where one of my mentor came and told me the golden words. Let me tell those words to you. Writing a love letter, preparing a speech without keeping audience in mind is like writing a love letter to whomsoever it may concern. You write a love letter thinking of your lover, right? The same way you write a speech thinking of your audience. And when you think of your audience and write, you're only guessing, right? There is no way of you knowing that, yes, this is the right speech for the audience. There is no foolproof way. So you have to do what entrepreneurs would do, a startup would do. They would have an idea, they would try it out, they would give an MVP, they'll put out something which is smaller in the market, they'll put it to a group of audience. You put it to a group of friends, hey, I have an idea like this, can I give a speech on this? Right? International speech contest, a lot of people are very secretive about their speech. I would actually ask you to be the other way around. Be very open about it. Throw the idea around to people and say that, you know what, this is the idea that I'm thinking of. Do you think it will sell? What do you think are the problems with the idea? Right? So you get a good idea of what audience like and what audience do not, only if you reach out to more of the audience. So if you wait for your perfect product, you build a technically sound product which the audience hate or they don't understand. It is quite possible, right? But you slowly evolve with the audience. You probably would start with a mediocre speech, but you'll end up with a fantastic speech, right? I have a friend called Ishida Ranganathan. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of it. He is a part of a club in Bangalore and a club in Chennai. Previously, he used to participate. He is someone who has participated in all the 4 contests at the district level and has come as at least runner-up in all the contests, right? He's fabulous. He documents, like, I learned documenting speeches from him, right? He documents like every speech, he documents multiple versions of it. And his mentor, I'm sure all of you would know his mentor, Nagaraj Rao. So he looks at all those versions, right? He writes 15, 16 versions. So it starts off with something which is very, very normal speech, like what any of us would give. And he makes it so worthy by refining after multiple iterations with the speakers. He understands how the audience react, right? He understands what he understands what they appreciate, what they don't. Even better if you give a questionnaire asking, okay, what do you think is the highlight of the speech? What do you think took you away from the speech? Were there any distractions? What do you think is the message that I tried to convey? Something that you want to do as an experiment, only if you ask question to the audience, you'll be able to understand, right? And you will do more and more of it to refine a speech. You can build a product or a speech in isolation and make it perfect. A better way is to, over a period of time, refine it. So I suggest, don't worry about failure. There was a year in which I gave 70 speeches, at least 50 of them were pathetic, right? But I was able to end up with 3 fantastic speeches. That was because I had the guts to give those 50 pathetic speeches. I didn't wait for perfecting them. I gave them, I understood why they work, why they didn't. Feel free to experiment. Toastmaster stage is there for you to experiment, right? Use Toastmaster as a platform to experiment these things, right? Look at, for example, I looked at the movie Memento. Any of you have seen the movie Memento? The movie has a different organization pattern, right? The first scene of the movie, the hero kills the villain. The climax is the very first scene, right? The second scene, so it is like a jumbled order. So the last scene is the first scene. The second scene is the actual first scene, but they show in black and white. Then they show the penultimate scene in color. Then the actual second scene in black and white. So it is like a reverse staircase pattern, and they both meet at the middle of the actual story, right? It sounds interesting. So I did a speech in this pattern. It failed miserably, right? But I understood a valuable lesson on that day, that this pattern is not possible. Probably I'm not capable of doing it in 7 minutes, right? But that movie worked. So only if you experiment, so don't hesitate to experiment things. Use this platform to experiment, but always learn from it. Look at what worked, what did not, right?
Sure.
Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
No problem. Any other question? All right. It was wonderful to have this opportunity, and thank you. I also learn a lot in this process, and I hope that it was beneficial. If not, or even if it was, I would want you to give me feedback. Feel free to reach out to me. I would share I think my number is available in WhatsApp. Please do post your feedback. It is very, very useful for me. I'm a feedback junkie. Really appreciate you for being here. Thank you for your time. Back to Kaushal.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much, Chandramouli, for this excellent and enlightening session. I can tell you, it just broke many of my myths, and of course, I believe that it would have broken many others' myths. So let's continue this next time onwards. I mean, we'll meet again next Saturday. Thank you, each one of you, for joining and taking your time to gel with us. See you all next time on Saturday, 3:30. Thank you so much. And do
Thank
take
you.
care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank
safe.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You're trying.
The story was me,